hugely successful. The Healthy Dispatcher brings tools to you. And I don't know what can be more important than that, than bringing tools to you. He's been described as awesome. He's been described as providing an awesome learning experience, captivating, thought-provoking, and incredible engaging. He's authored 3 books, and his stories and his books have inspired change in 911 across the United States. But I'm going to throw this part away because I'm also going to say this. He's been with us at Saturday to provide inspiration to you, not only at pre-conference workshop, but in some of the conference workshops. And for that, I cannot say, but it's an absolute pleasure and privilege, Adam, to have you be our keynote closing speaker. Adam Timm, let's bring him out.
Morning.
Oh, there's a clicker. Hold on. Did you know that 70% of workplace culture is shaped by the behaviors of frontline staff, not by the policy manual, not by those in leadership roles? Did you know that just one act of kindness at work can send ripple effects out and affect more than 20 people? And in our profession, I would say that's even more. Because have you ever noticed when you come in and you're having a not so good day, that every single interaction that you have with the community, with the responders, with your fellow coworker who you might be holding hostage for an entire 12-hour shift with your not so good attitude, sends ripple effects as well. Negativity is contagious, but so is positivity. In fact, I would argue that positivity is even more contagious. Those without rank, without title, are responsible for 50% of workplace influence. And so you may think this conversation about leadership is not about you. I just work here. That's above my pay grade. But people are watching you more than you think. And I hope that you take that role, that responsibility seriously. And so today I am here to invite you at the end of this conference into a story, and to tell a story of possibility for you, a story of opportunity. What is the story that you tell? What is the story told by your team at your center? What is the story that your culture tells? These are all big questions, and we'll get into them. But I have a few ground rules to get going. A couple things. Raise your hand if you have been in my conference sessions or training classes over the years. Raise your hand up high. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Amazing, amazing. So for those of you who raise your hand, you know the drill. I am going to encourage participation. We get out of these sessions what we put into them. So I'm going to ask you just for the next 40 minutes or so to please play full out. Meaning, I might ask you to give the person next to you a high five and say something cool like, "You are awesome." Do that right now. Turn to the person next to you, give them a high five and say, "You are awesome." Thank you.
You're an idiot.
I also have been given permission to step off the stage and work the room a little bit. So I will be walking around with a hot mic. So some of you may want to get on the mic. You will have an opportunity to get on the hot mic and share deeply personally revealing things on the microphone. On a question I have not yet decided yet, so feel a little ready for that. Also, I may use some colorful language during today's keynote. Is that okay?
Yes.
Is that all right? Okay, great. Heck yeah, thank you for the PG-13. I always ask for permission because I don't want to offend anyone. Some of you might be thinking, because you don't know me, doesn't he know who he's talking to? Yes, I only do 911 training classes. I've been in 911 myself for 22 years, and I know my audience. But I also do not want to lose anybody because I say the F word or something like that. So great, we're all on the same page. Then let's fucking go. I want you to think about the challenges that you face, both personally and professionally. Because our industry is rife with them. We've had staffing challenges for as long as anyone can remember. We could even say that it is status quo, that we're working down 50% of budgeted positions, that we're mandating overtime, that we're asking our high flyers to do more and more with each passing shift. And then you think about how that affects you and your family, and the ripple effects there. So I'd like you to consider, what are your biggest burning challenges right now, both in the center and outside of the center? Because this is such a large audience, I guarantee that there are folks in this room right now, today, considering leaving this profession. These 3 data points are from the APCO project Retains, which was a study commissioned in 1999. The initial report came out in 2005. There was a revised report in 2013. If you're not familiar with the APCO project Retains and the Effective Practices Guide, there is a website on the APCO website that you can check it out, or a web link. And it's a great resource for learning more about what the great centers do in this country when it comes to retention and inspiring team and hiring and recruiting. And it's interesting that when they fashioned the working group for the APCO Project Retains in 1999, it was one of the first public declarations that the industry has a staffing crisis. And if you've been working in this profession for that long, you've noticed it's getting worse, or it may be as bad as we've ever seen it. Hastened by the pandemic, hastened by what I would argue is a growing criticism of where I want to spend most of my waking adult life. I being the team members that you work with, the new generation coming into your center. Every single day they are questioning, do I want to come back? And if they answer that question in the negative too many times, guess what they will do?
Leave.
They will leave, yes, thank you. Which means, so the staffing situation means how many is a percentage of the budgeted positions you have filled. If you don't have all the budgeted positions filled, what must you do?
More overtime.
Force overtime. And the research shows that as you force overtime, it does what to dissatisfaction with working conditions? It increases dissatisfaction, creating disgruntledness, yes, which causes people to and rinse and repeat. And some of your centers have been circling the drain for so long that you can't remember it being any different. And I know that's frustrating. I run around all across the country, 200, 250 days a year, hearing these stories. But I have also heard stories of hope, of optimism, of centers who started in the midst of this cycle, but have chosen to tell a different story. So I want to share some of these stories with you, but more importantly, I want you to consider what you can do to change the story, to upset the status quo at your center. Because our tendency is to want to ignore things, to put our head in the sand and say, someone else will figure that out. As long as I can just do my 8 and skate. And I know many of you don't work 8-hour shifts, but that rhymes well. Or you're blaming somebody else. We all have our they. Even people in the highest levels at centers across the country have a they. And if you're not careful, you may find yourself pointing the finger at someone else. I would, but they won't let me. I would, but they didn't give me the budget. I would, but the fill in the blank. It doesn't take very long when I'm visiting a center to hear what people think when it comes to being a part of the team around here. Anytime someone says, yeah, they, what you're peering into is an us versus them dynamic in your center's culture. If the one thing that you do differently after going home from this conference is you work diligently every single day to bridge that divide, whatever the divide is, I usually find that it's admin versus the line or versus the floor, and because of the way staffing is in our industry right now, floor supervisors are merely supervisors in name. They are also working the floor. They're still working a console. And so they're part of us. You know, we're all in the trenches together. But they, you know, admin down the hall in their ivory towers, calling the shots, making decisions independent of the people who it really affects. Oh, they don't know what's going on. And I heard a story yesterday in my leadership breakout session of someone who recently became one of them. She promoted. And she said, I used to be one of them. And now simply because I have this new title, because I have this position, they don't trust me anymore. And it is an aspect of culture that you're peering into. So there's a bunch of little indicators that can tell you kind of what people think and what the perceptions are. And if your culture is below the line, I introduced to you here the ladder of accountability. If your culture is below the line, you will hear a lot of victim statements. You know, we could, but we can't. We would, but we can't. You know, someone else will do something. Or we might all just be so stuck in the way things are unconsciously, unaware of the possibility. For those of you who don't know me, I've spent the last 20 years or so learning what the great centers do differently than the rest in emergency communications. I've written a few books about it. My most recent is called People-Driven Leadership, How the Best 911 Centers Inspire Positive Change. And I wrote People-Driven Leadership after doing 3 or 4 years of research into what the great centers do differently than the rest. And I found that there are certain commonalities, and they are not unicorns, these fully staffed centers that have maintained full staffing for years. They're not some fantasy, these centers where people say, I love my team, I love where I work, and I'm proud to go in each and every day, and I can't imagine going anywhere else. It takes work. Sometimes years of work to get there, but it is possible. Now, if someone had told me this 20 years ago, I would also not have believed them. For the first 10 years of my time here in emergency communications, I was a frontline telecommunicator with the Los Angeles Police Department Communications Division. I was one of 650 line-level dispatchers, we had about 60 supervisors, so 700 civilian employees working communications division at LAPD, processing 3 million calls for service each year. So it's fucking busy. And I was ill-equipped to deal with the challenges of the job. Now, I didn't have a problem with 911 calls. I felt like working 911 was my opportunity to do what I signed up to do, help people make a difference. Working the radio, I was an all-star. Put me on a busy South LA frequency on Friday night, with 70 officers on one of the 35 patrol divisions. Sometimes, if it's 77 Division, we also have Metro, which is the SWAT guys out there, guys and gals running around poking the hornet's nest, and you don't know that they're in your division until they come up on base frequency because they have their own tactical frequency and say, hey, this is our 85. We're going to need a backup in a few more units out here. And you're like, oh great, I was already busy. But I love that. That's where I thrived. I had a really tough time working non-emergency. Because that's how we divided up the phones. Large agencies are really good about the division of labor. There's just so much going on. It's call after call after call on the phones. It's radio broadcast after radio broadcast. So we were cross-trained in all functions. When you came in for your shift, you're working the phones for your entire shift, or working the radio for your entire shift. And on the phones, you're working either 911 or non-emergency. And that is not an easy assignment for me, non-emergency complaint line. Because I found that there are many non-emergency police matters that meet the criteria for police dispatch that I don't agree with, personally, as Adam, the person sitting at the console. And one of the things that I had to do real fast, after I got my third sustained citizen complaint, was learn what my job really was. And it wasn't to take things personally when callers said something affectionate like, just do your job, I pay your salary, or you're just a lazy cop, so you're not going to do anything with this call. It is not my job to say, what do you mean? It is simply my job to say, I'm sorry you've been waiting so long for the police. If you could just verify the address, I'll make sure we have the call. But I didn't know that. For the first 7 years under the headset, I was having a really tough time on non-emergency. In fact, I have called in sick more times than I care to admit, knowing that tomorrow I was assigned the non-emergency complaint line. I was not a good employee. I was not one of the team members that you were looking forward to working alongside for a shift. And after my third complaint, I got suspension days. And Sergeant Hoyt, when he asked me which days off I wanted, which sometimes would be a good thing, but in this case, it wasn't. After I chose my days off and he dismissed me to go back to the floor and continue my shift, he said, you're getting dangerously close to the point in your career where your union can no longer protect you. And that's how stark the message had to get before I found a reason to change. Now, because you're smarter than me, because you can read the tea leaves, the subtle cues of whether or not your way works, you do not have to be threatened with termination or a divorce or some cataclysmic health malady that points you in the direction of possible change. You get to ask that question now. How do I go up the ladder? How can I acknowledge reality and embrace it? How can I help my team do the same? That is the challenge that I'm going to offer you today. What is your vision of possibility? That's leadership. The problem is, you are separated here in your current reality from where you want to be by this squiggly line. And this squiggly line represents a change, a behavior change. That's why change is so difficult, because we must change our behaviors. And what do we hate most in this profession? Change, yes. Mumbles and grumbles, even if it's a good thing. I remember when 20 years ago we started talking about next-gen 911. It's going to revolutionize our industry. And it is. Slowly. And we are still griping about it. Oh my gosh, we have to use another technology and another password and another, even though it's improving patient outcomes, even though we're saving more lives, even though it is a very good thing, the thing that is certain in this profession, now more than ever, is changing faster and faster than ever. So I'd like to get clear on where your hesitation to change is. back to your center and be a part of driving change as opposed to reluctantly being dragged along. Because we are in an urgent crisis right now as an industry. And nothing can do a change initiative more than not seeing how urgent it really is. And in fact, complacency can set in. You can say, I don't know, just the way it is. And it's interesting that in our profession, we so often will not change immediately, urgently, until complacency has caused a loss of life, or a delay of service, or something where we must come out and say, actually, we're doing everything we can to improve staffing, raise pay for everyone who currently works here, and we're starting a new hiring class. As Gordon Graham calls these, problems lying in wait. Why must we wait to attend to these problems? So I'd like you to consider your culture, your center's culture. If you're not familiar with organizational culture, certainly you've heard the term, but what is culture? Culture is a collection of the stories, of the behaviors, of the ways that we treat each other at work that have become taken for granted. It is not your center's culture unless it's just the way things are, just the way we do things. And so I'd like you to consider right now, what are some of the positive aspects of your center's culture? Some of the ways we treat each other, some of the implicit ways of treating each other, some of the stories that we tell each other, so the positive aspects that you look forward to aligning yourself with. And then I'd like you to also consider what are some of the not so positive aspects of culture. That we would do well to change the story, that you would do well to rewrite the script just a bit. And it's not really enough to kind of just sit there and noodle on this. I'd like to get this out. Don't worry. So I would like you to please stand up. Please stand up right now. Yes, please stand up. That is a honest request. Please stand up. Please stand up. And take a look around the table or the people in your immediate vicinity. Do you see people that you do not know? Do you see people you do not know? Yes, okay, great. So in just a moment, you are going to find a person that you do not know, and you're going to partner up with them. So this exercise requires just one partner, no group stuff. So you're going to find one partner that you do not know, and you're going to introduce yourself. And what I find works really, really well, very simple for an introduction, is name, agency, how long you've been here, and then the other person says the same thing, and then that's it. Once you have introduced yourself, listen carefully, don't go just yet. Once you've introduced yourself, you will choose an A and a B. One of you will be A, one of you will be B, doesn't matter if it's A or B, just do that very quickly. Once you've chosen an A and a B, just look at me quietly. I'll know it's time to give the next instruction. So we're going to please scale this. So right now, find a partner, choose an A and a B after your introduction. Go ahead.
Jenny. I'm just the wife of my husband who works for Navigator.
Oh, hello. Hello.
Hi. I'm Jenny.
I'm Lori Jo from Keynote.
Oh, nice.
Everyone yet? I'm Savannah. It's so nice to meet you. I'm from Greenville, the Dorney in Portland, Indiana. You're okay. Yeah, I've been in it around 8 years. Hear me? Okay.
And you've chosen an A and a B.
No, just yeah.
Waiting for the next instruction.
Yeah. First time in America. Very. My English is not so good, so I went right. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm really going to have to ask you to just shut up. Shut up. I love that you stepped out of your comfort zone and you met someone new, but now, let's come back. Okay. A's, raise your hand. A's, raise your hand. A's, raise your hand. Can I see my A's? A's, you are awesome. B's, raise your hand. B's, raise your hand. B's, you are badass. B, before you put your hand down, B, please point at your partner, A, and say, you're going first. A, thank you for volunteering to go first, and B, thank you for putting them to it. A's, listen very carefully. You're going to model a way that you're going to be the leader in the group, so listen very carefully. A's, in just a moment, I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock. You are going to have 1 minute to share with your partner one of the positive aspects of culture at your center. And you're going to have 60 seconds, a full 60 seconds. Please use your entire 60 seconds. Don't worry, B, you will get 60 seconds as well. When I say you must use your entire full 60 seconds, that means that if you say a few words and you're just standing there uncomfortably looking at your partner wondering, when is this minute going to be up? B, please get curious. Use an open-ended interview question and say, that's so interesting, can you tell me more about that? And please draw your partner out just a little bit, because this is a very important question. You absolutely have 60 seconds of content on this very important question. A's, are you ready? B's, are you ready to get curious if need be? A's, 60 seconds, go!
Alright, so something that's really cool about my culture at my center is I came in as a candidate about 9 months ago, and they were pretty stoked. So everything we get my current candidate also shut down, which I experienced that for a little bit. And as we have navigated, I have lost about 4 employees for this fall summer. So about 7 employees. We were already down a couple, so now we're about 40% staffing. And they have accepted
30 more seconds.
But they navigate. You know, if I'm at the weekend or whatever, and we have a call off, they just navigate. They'll text me and say, hey, this is the plan for tonight. How many shifters right now? Just me getting rid of different markers, but I have no idea. So I think the best thing about the culture that we have is that we really do. Unfortunately, the culture side of that had to, as it is, had to be they've had that kind of thing for themselves. So I would say that's a
Please give your partner a round of applause for sharing so openly on this very sensitive topic. And now switch. B's, your turn. 60 seconds, go.
What you do?
30 more seconds. Ten seconds, wrap up. And please give your partner a round of applause. Yay! A round of applause. And before you go back to your seat, give your partner a high five and say, you totally got this.
You totally got this.
Please sit down.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to get a share here. I'm walking in the middle aisle here, if you can see me. I'd like to hear from somebody, what's a positive aspect of your center's culture? Something you're proud of, something that you just shared and made you feel something, and you didn't even know that you had feelings left. because you've been working in this profession for a little bit too long. I see your hand up. If you could share your name, agency, and how long you've been doing this work to start off.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm with Allen County 911, Allen County, Kansas. And I've been a dispatcher for a year and a half.
Wow. Hey.
One thing I really like about our workplace culture is that we're kind of all friends. We all hang out. I mean, some of us will come up on our nights off just to come see each other and hang out and talk. We go to concerts together. We have actually a team Discord chat, which for those who don't know what Discord is, it's just like a chatting app where you can have different channels. We have a channel for like just memes. We have just general chatting channels. We talk about funny things that have happened at work. And actually on April Fool's Day, our director Chelsea made the mistake of leaving her door unlocked. So we put confetti cannons on the top of her door and put a bunch of paper airplanes on our deputy director's desk. And they had a great laugh about that. But it's great that we can just all talk and hang out and laugh together, and it's not fear that we're going to get in trouble for it.
I love it. I love it. Let's give Nicole a round of applause. And just Sarah and the team, thank you so much. It sounds like that would be a fun place to work. And these are the stories that are so interesting. It can be fun to work in a 911 center, or if 911 isn't your number, your communications center. Yes, there are centers where it is fun to work. People look forward to coming into work as opposed to look forward to that hallowed day when they can walk into the sunset for the final time because they are retired. It doesn't take very long in public safety to find out what someone's magic number is. They have minutes and seconds left to retirement. By the way, that's fine. You worked hard for your retirement. But if you occupy a formal leadership role and you are on countdown watch, you may want to consider your impact isn't positive. Because I often hear stories of people in formal leadership roles, meaning they have position, title, authority, rank, who are just cashing checks, just clocking time. You're like, I only have 3 more years left. That's a long slog for the people who look up to you. If you have 3 more years left and you're just phoning it in, no, I don't mean to call anyone out. If anything I say today feels like a personal attack, just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. But I do know my audience. As I just alluded to, leadership matters a great deal. It matters that we all show up like a leader. If you're in a formal leadership role, I hope you take seriously the impact that you make on a day-to-day basis. And I know that there are tasks and there's responsibilities screaming for your attention each and every day. And I know that it can be difficult to prioritize your people. But as my friend Melissa Alterio, who's the executive director of our Cobb County 911 says, as her personal philosophy, it's people over process. If the one decision you make differently when you go back to your center is to put on the leader cap more often, and yes, look at that inbox screaming for your attention and say, actually, I need to go talk to people. I need to learn more about what they think and feel about coming into work here. That is a game changer. One director in Colorado started her change initiative by asking herself this question: how do I want to feel coming into work? Because the accepted practice was their instructors hitting new trainees on the head if they didn't type fast enough, if they didn't get the concept quick enough. There was open hostility on the floor, and it was just accepted. Not surprisingly, they had a revolving door. Both both in the training program, and then when people finally graduated the training program, they got signed off or fully qualified, as we said in LAPD speak. They would sit around for a little bit and marvel at how poorly people treated each other, and then they would leave. By the way, your new team members are the very best judges of your center's culture. Why do you think that is? They have no bias, yeah. They're not indoctrinated. It's not the way things are for them yet. And so if you're losing people, especially great people, raise your hand if you have recently witnessed a team member, a new team member who was signed off, fully qualified, made it through the training program, which is the very most difficult time period in a baby telecommunicator's life. They made it. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to thrive. And then they hit the floor, and within a few weeks to a few months, that great team member who you were sure was going to be the next generation leadership left. Raise your hand if you have witnessed this happen. Put your hand up high, take a look around. You have X-ray goggles into your center's culture. If you lose people especially after they've been signed up, after they're fully qualified from the training program, it's a culture issue. And it's going to take work to get your head around, because you're part of the culture if you've been there a while, to get your head around what's driving good people away. And the challenge is, even if you do exit interviews, you're probably not hearing much actionable feedback coming out of your exit interviews. What you'll hear is, just wasn't for me. Over time. I'm just looking for something else. What we'd love to hear is someone comes in an exit interview and sits down. They say, hey, why are you leaving? Well, as I was sitting there, after I got off training, which was very difficult, but due to the encouragement of my instructor and the academy team, who was great at boosting our confidence and getting us what we thought ready for the realities of the floor, it was still difficult to be shadowed and have an instructor on my back for those many weeks before I was finally set free, and I thought I was really going to fly. And as I sat there by myself, I got to read a book then. I could go on social media. I could even sit there and do whatever I wanted. I was really looking forward to that. But as I was sitting there, I noticed something. That those nifty values, it's a beautiful frame, by the way. Nice paint. It looks great. Those values, though, don't seem to be what we're really about. In fact, I see the people with tenure here are the worst violators of the principles imbued by those core values. And so, rather than continue to sacrifice myself for an organization that doesn't walk their talk, I'm going to go find a more values-driven workplace. Wouldn't that be great information? Because you can do something with that. We can take the values off the wall and we can say, what's really going on here? Why are we having people who are supposed to be good stewards of what we're all about not being the leaders we need them to be? Now, if you have any of that going on, I encourage you to go back and start having conversations. If you're in a formal leadership role, meaning you have position, title, authority, rank, it is your job to ask these questions. It's also your job to do everything else that's on your plate. And I know that's a lot. You also have informal leaders. You have the positive informal leaders who are encouraging. They are boosting morale. Raise your hand if you right now can think of someone you are excited to work with when you're on shift, because they come in and they light up the room and you want to be more like them, even though you know it would be difficult because they're consistently that way. Awesome. I'm so glad that you have that example. I have several of those examples when I was working for the LAPD. You also have some not so positive informal leaders These are the folks who are gossiping, seeding negativity, who are saying this place fucking sucks all the time and giving all the ample evidence of how much it sucks. I have news for you. It's good news, actually. They're not the majority. In fact, they are very much in the minority. They may talk the loudest. They may convince you that they are spokespeople for the majority, but they aren't. They're spokespeople for themselves and their clique, which is usually 10% or less of your total staffed positions. I call them the toxic 10%. So what do? Well, as a formal leader, use your position, your title, your authority to make good on the promise. People over process. If you're an informal leader, use your powers for good. I find that even the tenured crusties who have crossed over somewhere along the line to the dark side want things to change. That's why they won't shut up about it. 10 years ago when they asked us to volunteer for a working group or steering committee or the morale committee or whatever the hell that is, I volunteered, but no one listened to me. So now, but I'll wait. If someone wants my feedback, I will share it. But they have to ask me nicely. And if you're a formal leader and you have to ask the tenured crusties nicely to get on board, just do it. They want to get involved. You need their influence. But they want it to be approached in their own personal way. If you have your phone with you, does anyone not have their phone with them? I would like you to open up an application. It can be Notes if you had iPhone, or some other app if you have an Android device. And I would like you to answer this question right now. How is the way we've always done it preventing positive change? I would like you to highlight one specific way that you continue to do year after year after year after year, even though it's not working. Why? To continue to practice the same things that aren't paying dividends, expecting a different result. Please highlight that right now. Use this awareness to go back and start a conversation. Maybe your training program needs to be revamped. Maybe you're not using your quality assurance program to catch people doing great work. Instead, you're using it from a punitive approach to catch people messing up. By the way, there's much more great work happening each and every shift than there is work requiring remedial action. Is there not? Even the problem children, I know because I was one, are doing great work most of the time. However, as a problem child, I got a lot of attention. The wrong kind of attention. But there were great team members, my fellow coworkers at LAPD. Every single day they came in. Every single shift they worked. Every single shift, every transmission, every phone call, they did great, great work. Guess how much attention they got? Very little. Maybe an occasional commendation that was given to all team members for working on Christmas. Which, there's nothing wrong with a commendation for a blanket commendation. But if you have people doing great work each and every day for years and years and years and years and years and you're not highlighting that, please do. So very quickly, I have 7 minutes left, and 350 more slides to go through. Some starting points for you. If you currently have a core values document, a mission statement, a vision statement, these trappings of organizational success is what I call them. Meaning, you cannot be successful without them. But just because you have them does not mean you will be successful in cultivating a positive work culture. I'd like you to consider if these documents that you have, if you have them, are they informing daily work life in a meaningful way? And if the answer to that question is a resounding, I don't know, you have homework. If it's a resounding, absolutely not, you have even more work to do, because that's definitive. These links of accountability, if you don't have all of them present, it's very difficult to hold people accountable. It's very difficult to change culture without all of these pieces in place. Now, this is a diagram that I created after having all those conversations for the leadership book. And it's in the leadership book because I found that all the best centers have all of these pieces. They have core values in place. They have a code of conduct that says this is what our core values mean from a conduct, behavioral expectation perspective. And then they bring those values into the policy and procedure manual. And then they communicate clearly. This is what we expect. This is what is expected, agreed. And then we get a back and forth agreement around what is expected and how we will hold each other accountable to those expectations. And accountability must include dismissal. And it's only a last resort. But if it isn't a weapon in your arsenal, then all that comes before doesn't actually mean much. I stand before you an example of formal discipline. Had I not gotten my third complaint, served suspension days, I would not have taken the warning seriously. It was then I asked for help. It was then I started to learn that I was burnt out and had been for years. It was then I found that I was the common denominator when I was blaming everybody else for the way things were turning out. I was blaming the college for being so stupid. I was blaming my coworkers for being so lazy. I was blaming my supervisors for gunning for me, completely overlooking the fact that I was giving them ample ammunition. See disciplinary record. None of my complaints were unfounded. You know how I know that? They do an exhaustive investigation with every formal complaint. And the most damning evidence I found, and maybe you've also found this, is the tape. Have you ever had to sit in a room and when they press play and then after 3 minutes of not doing your best work, you have to justify why you were so discourteous? All three of my complaints sustained allegations were neglect of duty because I did not create a call for service when I knew the policy said, you shall, and discourtesy because my tone never lied. Also, I said stupid things like, what do you want the police to do about it? Not a good question. Ask a caller who's pissed off. So in order to bring this to life, you're going to have to enroll people and give people responsibility. This is a great way of fashioning ownership and buying. You have people who want to get involved, but if your culture says right now it is not popular to raise your hand and get involved, you're going to have to invite people personally. You have change agents waiting to get involved, waiting to be personally invited. And then shape some expectations and set some goals for what this change initiative can do. Every successful change initiative that I've written about, that I've learned about, and by the way, the book basically wrote itself when I invited enough great leaders from our profession into conversations. I was like, oh my gosh, we're doing similar things, we're not having these conversations. Started with sitting down with everybody and being in conversation on a regular basis. What do you think is going on? How do you think we can improve? How can I empower you? What resources, what support do you need to be successful? And in order to have these conversations and not piss people off, you may have to improve your emotional intelligence. All of the best centers have leaders who are emotionally intelligent. They hire for emotional intelligence. They train for emotional intelligence. That's the head over heart. It's the reason why for being in communications, we sure don't communicate very well. Because what we do at the console is nothing like true communication. We're processing information using our skill set, our call taker skill set, our radio dispatcher skill set. It's not actually communicating. How good of a communicator are you? How good are you at embodying empathy in all that you do? I have an 8-hour class on emotional intelligence, so we're not going to get too much into it. This is the extent of it. If you can continue to bring your empathy online when you're working with callers, when you're working with responders, when you're working with your fellow coworkers, which is understanding and appreciating how they feel, where they're coming from, game changer. All the best leaders have this skill set. If you can bring some more alignment between how you say what you say, meaning if you're excited, tell your face. Because if there's cognitive dissonance when you're talking, people will doubt you. They don't know why. Bringing some awareness to your emotional expression is the EQ skill can help. So the question is your attitude, is your demeanor on a day-to-day basis worth catching? And if you say, well, it depends, I encourage you to bring some awareness to the circumstances and factors that it depends upon. Because I know people who, no matter what's going on in their life, they come in each and every day and they put a smile on their face and they make themselves approachable and they ask, how you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? How can I help you? And these are people who will work on the line, these are people who work in leadership roles, and they understand the power of this equation. This is so important. If there's one thing that you take out of this conversation, it could be this. We cannot do this job on our own. We need relationships. We need to connect with each other on the floor, even on those days when you don't feel like it. Because when team breaks down, and I hate to invoke this, but it's ultimately true. When teams break down in emergency communication centers, people die. We need to be building relationships 95% of the time, making deposits into the relationship bank account 95% of the time. It's 5% of the time you will need to make a withdrawal. How good are you at investing in your relationships at work? So as we draw to a close, as the conference draws to a close, I want to invite you to take action. I want you to take something from this conference and go and do something with it. Share it. Tell people what you learned. If you want to assess your center's culture because you don't really know where it's at, here's an action you can take. You can scan this QR code right now, and you can take a quick assessment. It'll take you 3 to 5 minutes. It's a gift I want to give you if you're serious about taking action, if you're serious about knowing where you're currently starting with regard to how well your culture is thriving, or if it's not. To cultivate a true sense of urgency, you need to continue to tell the full story. That's bringing the outside in. You need to behave with urgency each and every day. And you can even practice urgent patience. You can listen. You can act. You can show people that you care about what they say and what they think, and find opportunity in crisis. And also, just as a last little exclamation point, you must address and deal with the toxic 10%. The 10% of your total staff that is actively disengaged. They are sabotaging work life for others right now. You don't have to fire them. That's not what I'm saying. But you do have to work with them and mitigate the potentially harmful effect that they have on your center's culture, especially if you're trying these things on. Any new culture initiative will be torpedoed by the toxic 10% if you don't address their behaviors. So I'd like you finally to write down what specific action you are committed to taking in the next 24 hours based on your experience here this week at this conference. So when you leave here, what specific action are you committed to taking to do something with? You got this. going to be easy, but it is possible. The story of your center is being written every day. And that's not being written by the policy manual, by those in formal leadership ranks. It's being written by you. So the question is not if you'll make a mark. The question is, what kind of mark will you make? Thank you for the mark that you've already made. I'm so excited to see what mark you'll make next. Jerry?